welcome back to Franklin Covey's twice weekly podcast on leadership with Scott Miller. That's me. I'm your host now, entering almost 7 years in 500 episodes taped, where I am privileged and honored to, on Tuesdays and Fridays, join you in this studio where we interview some of the world's most remarkable and influential thought leaders, coming from all different walks of life. Sometimes they are Fortune 50 CEOs, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, intrapreneurs, this new term I like, wannapreneurs, people that have a side hustle. They're academics, they're researchers, they're people of enormous fame, and sometimes you may not even know who they are, but they've done something remarkable. They've researched something relevant. In some cases, they have survived something tragic and have summoned the courage and the vulnerability to come and talk about it and teach through their own pain. This podcast is sponsored by FranklinCovey, the world's most trusted leadership firm based here in Salt Lake City, where our nearly 40-plus year mission is to help people achieve greatness, to inspire greatness in people and organizations everywhere. We work with companies around the world, helping to develop great cultures, healthy, high-trust cultures, where people are more focused and more disciplined and are executing on their top, most important strategies and goals. Today, my guest is Loren Ridinger. She is an entrepreneur. She is a survivor, like I just mentioned, of an unspeakable tragedy, the loss of her best friend and partner in life and in business, and has written a new book releasing called Scrambled or Sunny Side Up: Living Your Best Life After Losing Your Greatest Love. Loren, welcome to On Leadership.
Hey, Scott, how are you? Excited to be here with you.
Well, I'm not as good as you are because it is cold and kind of rainy and overcast in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I don't appreciate you flaunting that perfectly sunny day in Miami, Florida today.
Oh, it's been so nice this week, I have to say. So I'm glad to be back in South Florida, my home, and it's just amazing. Although I love Utah, where you're at. So
well, you can call me in August, and I'll flaunt the gorgeous weather in August when you're dying in Miami, right?
I have a feeling you will.
Hey, it's great to meet you today. Delighted to have you on. You know,
thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Not every one of our listeners or viewers may immediately recognize you by name, but they will absolutely realize, oh, I know who she is, when you talk a little bit about your role as an entrepreneur and co-founder of two remarkable entities, Market America and Shop.com. Would you rewind, Loren? We'll talk about the book and the tragic loss of your life partner in a moment here. I'd like you just to talk about your businesses, and people can get a better sense for kind of how you came to write this loving book.
You know, 32 years ago, my husband and I had started a company called Market America. And it was really based on the idea that, you know, so many people had spent money advertising, through billboards, commercials, magazines, the traditional ways. And he really believed that in order to help people, instead of, paying to advertise, we should pay people to advertise, basically like social media is today, through word of mouth. And so we started Market America, a community of people who were able to sell products and recommend products to people that they know and love. And here we are 32 years later, still doing the same thing. Nearly a $1 billion company, has done incredible over the 32 years, built a large community of people with incredible products. So I find and consider myself lucky because we have this incredible community of followers and leaders who are, entrepreneurs from their home, and it's incredible. And they don't have to inventory anything. They don't have to ship anything. We do all the work for them behind the scenes, but they can have their own e-commerce business. And it's been an amazing journey. And my husband's philosophy his whole life was, if we help other people succeed, we will automatically succeed. And so I'm continuing doing that, but that is what we have done for 32 years, and really grateful for that opportunity.
Loren, I rarely do this, but I'm interested because a couple million people just kind of got closer to the phone that have a side hustle, that have an entrepreneurial dream, and they're not quite sure how to get started. It's amazing. My oldest son, Thatcher, is 14, and when his friends from 9th grade come over for a sleepover, I ask them all what they want to do for a business, and everyone says, I'm going to drop ship. Now, they have no idea what that means, but they're all going to be in the drop shipping business. And who knows, they might be. At my invitation, would you rewind a little bit and talk about Shop.com and how does it empower entrepreneurs. I'd love to people to flood the website today and learn about it, and how can it help them
Me
achieve their
too.
dream? You're up.
Well, it's incredible because we really have this incredible opportunity where somebody can become an entrepreneur with shop.com, have their own website. We give them their own shop.com/Scott, and they get a transparent website that they can sell to anybody through social media, online, word of mouth, and they can access any one of our thousands of products. They don't have to inventory a thing. They can send their customers to click and buy. We'll ship the product and they get paid a commission and a large retail profit on each product, which is really incredible. And so they do that. And we've had so many people become so successful by doing that because they really don't have to inventory anything. I think what happens is that people get confused when they start a business. They think it's so, well, let me just do this business myself. They don't understand that there's cost in inventory, cost of making the product, liability, the law. You have to follow FTC, FDA regulations. And so we kind of take all the hard work and we do it ourselves, and we give somebody what we call a business in a box. And they can get started right away. It costs I think it's $100 to get started. We give you that business in a box, and somebody can start selling products literally tomorrow.
Okay, well, for those who are watching on television, the size of that ring on your finger means it must have gone pretty well for you and for others.
Well, my husband and I were very poor. And when we first started, I was 18 years old. When I met him, he was 18 years older than me. And we had no money. And he wrote me a beautiful letter, I think 2 or 3 years into our relationship one day. And he wrote, one day we're going to make it so big by helping other people succeed that I'm going to buy you the biggest ring I can find. And he was a guy who's known to live up to his promises.
Well, congratulations to you. My wife is jealous of your husband, not just your ring. Okay, let's fast forward. You and your husband build this business. It's going well. And all of a sudden, something interesting happens. That happened to a lot of people. This happened to Katharine Graham. It happened to Lauren Powell. It happened to Sharon Sandberg and others, right? That your husband suddenly passed. Would you, I know it's a tender memory, you write a lot about your marriage and your business. Tell us what happened, because it is a tragic situation that almost all of us will face at some point in our life, yours perhaps sooner than others. Talk about that, and what immediately did you learn in the aftermath of your husband's passing?
Yeah, I think, I realized quickly how unprepared we are for loss. I think about my own life with grief. I know grief very well. I lost my mother when she was 42. I lost my father when he was 63. I was very familiar with grief, very much in touch with grief, uncomfortable with it, but I was familiar with it because I had a very close family, and I lost my parents very young. So I knew what pain felt like. I just didn't know what this type of pain felt like. People often say when they're in grief, that their pain is worse than somebody else's. I grew up with JR. I was 18. He taught me everything I knew. He believed in me. He trusted me. And so everything I had learned along the way was through his coaching. So he was my coach, my mentor, my best friend, and my husband. And we decided that after we had just celebrated our 30-year convention for our company, it was a big one for us. We decided we were going to go away for a few weeks and enjoy the fruits of our labor and really just be grateful for everything that had happened over 30 years. And we rented a beautiful boat out in the Croatia. We got out there, and it was very quiet. I assumed he was exhausted from our 4-day event that we had just had. We had just went to our friend Ben and Jennifer's wedding. We had been on a lot of planes. We got to Croatia, and 2 or 3 days in, he died. He had a pulmonary embolism at his lungs and died instantly within minutes. No notice. He was healthy as a horse. Just took me by total shock, surprise, devastation, a loss that I never thought I could recover from, and one that really made me understand that the grief I had experienced in the past was nothing like this grief.
Loren, how long ago was this?
2 years ago.
And at that point, you had been married for?
32 years.
And without being macabre, you're on this boat together. You had other guests on the boat. Like, tell us.
We were on the boat. It was my husband and I and my brother and his wife, who my brother is the president of our company. And it was also one of our best friends. He was there. His wife got ill and she wasn't able to come. But the five of us were together. Croatia was on my husband's bucket list. He had always wanted to go there. We had spent lots of summers as a family in south of France and in Italy, the Italian coast. And this was a new thing that he wanted to do. And so I had kind of surprised him and said, look, we're going to charter this boat. We're going to finally go where you wanted to go. And he was just overwhelmed with happiness. He thought we were going to do it a year earlier, and I could not do it a year earlier because our 30th convention was coming up, and I asked him to wait till August. Just give me a little time, wait till August. Once we get through this 30th, we deserve to take some time off. And so, we were all on the boat. We were celebrating. We were having a great time, really enjoying everything we had just come off a stage doing for 4 days. It was really a big convention, not just marking the 30th of our company, which is a milestone in itself, because most companies, hardly make it to 30 years anymore. But it was also, fresh out of COVID. It was the first in-person event we could have in a long time since COVID. We were really ecstatic over it, and it was just beautiful and phenomenal. And JR and I, we felt like we performed at our finest. And we really, we didn't know if we would ever see the next 30th. And so we were really happy with it. And we went on that boat. And we decided we were going to take some time, a few weeks to ourselves. And we were going to go to Spain, visit some friends afterwards. And of course, we never made that journey. But, we were enjoying ourselves, having a great time with my brother, who was, my husband's favorite person, besides myself and his children. But it just, everything went wrong. He just took a deep breath, and that was his last breath. He told me to stay still. I'm fine. Walked away. I gave him a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. By the time I checked on him, he wasn't breathing anymore. I thought maybe he had indigestion. I thought he had acid reflux, something he had had often. After eating, he would get a little acid reflux, and he was like, like a deep breath inside. And I was like, are you okay? And he's like, stay here, I'm fine. And he walked away, and that was it. I lost him. And it took me a year of reenacting that moment. Like, could I have done something differently then? Why didn't I walk away with him? But, my husband let me be in charge most of our life. But, there was moments when he would say things like, stop, or stay here, or wait. And he would say it in a tone that you understood he wanted his moment. So I assumed that he had had some form of indigestion or just acid reflux, and he was fine. He was like, stay here, I'm fine. And I did, and I waited a few minutes, and I went looking for him. And my sister-in-law had told me at that time, JR's on the floor doing yoga, and I knew at that moment that I had lost him. He wasn't doing yoga. It was just 2 minutes later.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. What have you learned about yourself since your best friend and business partner and husband's passing? What have you learned about your courage and your strength and your perseverance that maybe you didn't fully know or believe prior to this massive pivot in your life?
Well, I learned a few things. I mean, the first thing you learn, I think, after grief that you're not expecting at all is, when I lost my mother, I suffered. I was very close to her. When I lost my father, I suffered. And interestingly enough, I wasn't as close to him, even though my parents were married. He wasn't the one in the family who was the warm, fuzzy one. She was. She was the glue of our family. So when I lost my dad, I felt like I really had a great loss, because I felt it was like the end of an era, a place I belonged. But when I lost my husband, I felt like I lost my courage, my belief, my confidence. As he was the guy in the morning who would remind me, like, whatever you do today, baby, go tackle the world. You can handle it. And he instilled that in me every single day. So imagine waking up every morning and somebody saying, hey, baby, what are you going to tackle today? You're going to kill it. You can accomplish anything. And I felt like I'd lost that. It had been robbed from me. It just was gone. Poof. Out the window, and I felt like I wasn't able to do anything. And it really took me paying attention to the person that was in the mirror, and the things that he would say, he wasn't saying them just to say them. He was saying them because he believed them. He saw something special, and that if he could see it, I could see it. And I started to pay attention to that. And it made a big difference in what this journey has looked like for me. It has been filled with ups and downs. Certainly, I don't think anybody ever recovers from grief like this. I don't think anybody ever really recovers and becomes the same person they ever were. I miss a lot about that old Loren. I miss the life. I miss the laughing at night. I think mostly I miss the pillow talk with my husband, but I've learned to love myself in a way I didn't love myself before. I always thought I was really good at what I did, but now I understand why. Now I can see it. Now I feel it. Now I know where my strengths are and how he saw them, and now I see them. And I think we get so caught up waiting for other people to validate who we are that I learned to validate who I am on my own. And that became really important in my journey of finding a way to recover.
Loren, you've authored this new book called Scrambled or Sunny Side Up, Living Your Best Life After Losing Your Greatest Love. And you teach a variety of super practical lessons, maybe how unrelatable a lot of your story might be in terms of your success and your grief. The lessons are immediately applicable to anybody and everybody that wants to take, 3 or 4 hours and digest your book. Let's revisit some of these lessons. I'm going to pitch 3 or 4 of them to you. And I want you to do a masterclass, a mastermind in the next 15 minutes.
You got it.
You talk about and teach how to focus on progress, not perfection. What's the difference and what's the insight there?
We get so focused on being perfect, so we never start until we have everything lined up perfectly. And you're just going to waste a lot of time. You just need to take action. You just need to begin. You need to make progress. In order to make progress, you got to start. So you got to stop worrying about it being perfect. Nothing happens perfectly. It's like people say, well, we're going to perfectly plan to have our family, perfectly plan to have our children. If we all perfectly plan to have our children, we'd never have any. Let's face it, right? You just have to begin. You have to start the process. And progress began to equal happiness for me. Little steps at a time. Progress was making me smile again.
Loren, give me an example in your own life, maybe professionally, where you started something and you focused less on perfection and more on progress, and it turned into something maybe bigger or better than even you envisioned.
I think just recently, just last year, when I had to speak publicly for the first time without my husband, I was so worried for months, the buildup of it, so worried for months about what people would expect of me, what people would think. Can she lead this organization? Can she lead this company without her husband? Can she be the CEO? And so I started to build this thing up in my head and worried about how I was going to be perfect, that when I finally walked up there, I just dropped all the notes and I said, I'm going to talk to you from my heart. I want to talk to you about what I'm going through, and I want to be very transparent with you, and I want us to understand that I won't do things exactly as he did, but I will do the very best I can to be the very best version of me for you. And I think when people saw that, they opened up their hearts, they really embraced me, and it was honestly one of the best events we ever had. And I received thousands of letters from people just saying that they were all in with me, that they were behind me, that they believed in me. And I realized in that moment that I don't have to be JR and I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be the best version of myself and show that we're making progress and move people in the right direction. And I can say it with so many things. Like right now we're in a major, I've had to get my team together and we're talking about how the world has changed, how things are pivoting, and that televisions are just an accessory, not a necessity anymore. And we've got to be able to make sure that we're operating from people's devices, because people are scrolling, they're buying online, they're buying on their iPads. Not everybody's attached to what a TV used to be a necessity. It's more of an accessory today, and we have to adjust our thinking. And so I think when I get my team and myself not focused on everything lined up being perfectly, but actually start taking action. Because if you wait for everything to be perfect, you will be the smartest person in the graveyard, but you won't have done anything at all.
Let's talk about identity. Stedman Graham is a very famous entrepreneur, former athlete. Most know him as the life partner to Oprah Winfrey, a friend of mine, and has been on our program several times. One of the most profound things Stedman Graham has taught me is the fact that most of us are living our lives fulfilling an identity that somebody else picked for us or placed upon us, likely our parents. And you write and talk a lot about how to find yourself and how to live your own identity. Would you take exception to what Stedman says? I mean, he says, stop living someone else's identity for you. Go live your own.
It's crazy because I totally agree with that. And I actually experienced it. I remember when I was 18 years old, my dad kicked me out of bed and said, "You're going to be a flight attendant for Eastern Airlines." I said, "Well, that's impossible. I just met this guy. I just started dating my husband at the time." I said, "Well, that's impossible. We're going to start an online business." Now, back then it was called the World Wide Web. And it was mostly data filled. It wasn't filled with products that people could buy. And I was like, "I don't want to be an Eastern Airlines flight attendant. I don't even like to fly. I'm afraid. It's not for me." So, "Well, that's impossible. You're going to do it." And we stood in line in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I was living at the time. 300 people in line ahead of me. I got up to the front of the line. There was no cell phones. I couldn't call an Uber to pick me up. My dad waited outside for me because I was still living at home at the time. And I was thinking, how can I avoid this? And I went up front to the front of the line, and the woman said to me, "Wow, well, welcome to Eastern Airlines. What makes you want to fly the friendly skies?" I said, "I don't. There's nothing about this job. There's nothing about this job I want. My father's made me come here." She said, "Well, that's so funny." She goes, "Well, you just look the perfect part. And wow, this is amazing. What makes you like Eastern Airlines over the other airlines?" I said, "I don't. I prefer US Airways." I was doing everything I could, Scott, to get out of getting that job. You know what I mean? And back in the day when I applied for that job, fighting, kicking, and screaming, it was like a very Me Too world. Red lipstick, good legs, the whole 9 yards. And so I got to the car and I knew I just did it. I knew I avoided getting that job, but I got to the car. My dad said, "How'd it go?" I said, "Amazing. It was awesome." And I was thinking to myself, I definitely blew it. I'm so happy. And I got home, and a week later, I got the job. I was traumatized. And I had to go to Atlanta to be trained, and I cried. I called my mom. I said, "Mom, please don't make me do this. I don't want to do this. I met this new guy. His name is J.R. Ridinger. We're going to start an internet company. It's going to change the way people shop, but more importantly, it's going to create little entrepreneurs all over the world." She's like, "That sounds great. Just go along with this for right now." I was like, "I don't want to do this." "Well, just do the training. We'll find a way out for you later." I went to Atlanta. I did the 5-week training. Worst thing I ever did for myself. My boyfriend, JR, picked me up at the airport on the way home. He said, "Loren, if you don't go home right now and tell your dad you're not going to take this job, you're going to become a version of yourself you never meant to be." And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't want to become what somebody else wanted me to be. And I went home and I paced the floor, and I thought, "Oh my God, I got to tell my dad." He was scary. My dad was always scary to me. And I thought, how am I going to tell him I don't want to do this, but I've got to do it. I don't want to become a version of somebody else that I'm not supposed to be. I'm supposed to be an internet entrepreneur. I'm supposed to help people. And that was funny because I had no experience. It was just what I had built in my head from listening to him and believing in myself. And so I went home and I paced the floor, and I saw his headlights come up. And before he came in, I ran to the mailbox and got the mail to bring it in just to buy some time. And I saw a letter from Eastern Airlines. And the letter said Eastern Airlines had gone out of business, and that Orient Airlines was giving me the job next. And I tore that letter up, and I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, Eastern Airlines is out of business, and so am I. I'm not going to become this version of me. I'm going to start an internet company." He said, "You're going to have to get out of the house." I said, "Okay," and I did. But I am one of the few who actually does. Most people become a version of themselves that they never meant to be, and it's never too late to get out of it.
I am frequently asked what it is like to host a podcast. In fact, this Franklin Covey's podcast is the world's largest leadership podcast. Through a lot of hard work from a lot of people you can't see on the camera right now. And I say, it's interesting being a podcast host because oftentimes you have guests that can't carry the interview, right? They're an academic or a researcher. Perhaps they're a very brilliant person, but they're shy or retiring or an introvert, and you have to talk a lot and ask a lot of questions. And then there are guests like you that you should, as the host, not speak and just ask an occasional question and let the guest run, because you are an exceptional storyteller. You know this because I'm sure you've been told by countless people what a great storyteller you are. I love the story about Eastern Airlines. I remember it. I'm from Orlando. I remember, of course, Eastern Airlines and competition with Delta.
I'm aging you and I, Scott. I'm
That's
aging
okay.
us.
Well,
Don't we look good?
you look like $1 million, so that doesn't matter.
Thank you.
You share. Anyway, that was a compliment to you on. I just like sitting back and just listening to you. I'm beaming, listening to your stories and thinking about how that will change my parenting of our 3 sons, how that will change, the last third of my life, how I ignite my wife Stephanie's dreams and make sure she lives the identity that she wants, which may be changing, right?
I love you for saying that. That's why I wrote the book. It's filled with stories like that actually helped me become the person I am. And when I look at these stories along the way, there's one story that stands out that really helps define who I was, which was when I was 18 and my husband and I would travel city to city driving in our beat up car. And he would say, we're going to go tell people we're starting an online business and people will learn to get involved. And so he would get up there in front of 6 or 7 people and they'd look at us like we were crazy because people didn't understand the World Wide Web back in 92 like that. And so he would say, one day we're going to have a mall without walls and people will be able to buy products and you'll be able to make money by the recommendation of products to the people you know and the people you don't know. And, I would look at the people in the room and they would look at us like we were nuts. And so after the meeting, it's like, wow, that was a great meeting, wasn't it? Wasn't that an incredible meeting, Loren? I was like, well, I'm not sure that they agree. Because they looked at us like we were crazy. He goes, it doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what you think. What do you believe? And I remember that moment. And I said, well, I believe in us, of course. And he said, well, then tomorrow night you're going to hold a meeting. I said, well, I can't. I'm 18. I've never spoken in front of people before. I'm afraid to publicly speak. I can't do that. He said, you absolutely can. You're the greatest speaker I've ever met, greatest female speaker I've ever met. And you're going to be incredible when you do it tomorrow in San Antonio. Well, when I got there, Scott, long story short, first minute I got up there, I said, hi, everybody. My name is Loren Ashley, before I was married, of course. And I passed out, fainted on the floor in front of 7 people. It was awful. I woke up and all 7 people were like looking at me, fanning over me like this. And I remember my boyfriend, but soon-to-be husband, JR, looked up at me, said, get up. You were incredible. They turned off the air conditioner. Anyone would have passed out. It's too hot here in San Antonio. You're going to be great in Houston tomorrow. Get up. I was so embarrassed. I got in the car and all I kept doing was trying to figure out how I was going to break up with him because I didn't want to speak in Houston. I was scared to death. I was awful. I was so embarrassed. And he said, you've got to do it. Long story short, I did it in Houston. And it was probably just as bad as when I did it in San Antonio, but I didn't faint. And I did it every day for the rest of my life. And I still do it today. Talking to, it doesn't matter if it's 2 people or 20,000 people. That type of belief instilled in you that you can become anything you want to be was what helped make who I was. But when I lost him, it's the same conversation I had to have with myself to remind myself that I was capable of doing it.
This could be an hour-long interview. I know very little about your husband other than what you write about him in the book, almost every page. A letter you wrote to him, something he'd said to you, how you believed in him, what he taught you. Sounds like your husband was a phenomenal mentor, coach, leader. What's the biggest lesson you learned from him that you think will be his enduring legacy in your life?
To believe in yourself. He used to write me, I have 5,000 letters in a trunk that I filled of all the letters he wrote me, all the love letters, and they all end with the same thing. I believe in you. And I think when you believe in others and you believe in yourself, anything is possible. And that is really what this book is about. It's not just about grief. It's about believing in who you are. And that, my husband asks me every day, Loren, should I have, scrambled or sunny side up? Should I have scrambled or sunny side up? Every morning I wake up, I come out and say, hey, baby, how are you? Scrambled or sunny side up? I say scrambled, sunny side up. And then, I love that he wanted my opinion. But after 10 years, you're busy. And I'm like, I don't know, baby. What do you want? It's your stomach. Scrambled or sunny side up? And I would get frustrated with it. And that's why I named the book Scrambled or Sunny Side Up, because the very reasons that we fall in love with somebody frustrate us later, which is silly and stupid. And I don't know why it let it get to me. Yeah. But when you go through grief, life is scrambled, but you can turn it sunny side up again.
Beautifully said. Your husband would be proud. He's probably extremely proud. Okay, last question. I got a bone to pick with you. I have written 10 books myself. I've spent 35 years in the leadership development industry. I literally have sold or led teams that have sold hundreds of millions of dollars of leadership solutions, personal development workshops and tools. I've interviewed anybody and everybody there is who's ever written a book on self-improvement and personal development. And this term is a conundrum, and it's kind of this idea of knowing your inner voice. You hear people talk about listen to your inner voice, don't resist your inner voice. I'm like, what the hell is an inner voice? I don't know if that's just me talking to myself because I have early dementia. I don't know if it's what I'm saying out loud in the shower. My wife will come into the bathroom every morning. Who are you talking to? I'm like, oh, I'm just rehearsing a speech I'm going to give to the CEO, or I'm rehearsing a pitch to a client, and is that my inner voice? What the heck is your inner voice? How do you find it? And when do you know if and when to listen to it and act on it?
I'll tell you, I feel like the inner voice is the voice, and the way we hear it, by the way, is by quieting things around us. And I learned that's how I survived this, because I used to hear my husband say all the time, I believe in you, I know you can do this. And that was his voice. And during my grief, the world went on, and I learned to quiet things around me so I could hear my inner voice of saying, and sometimes I would get confused along the way, like, is that his voice or my voice? His voice or my voice? Because he was already gone. But when I quieted the noise, I would hear myself say, you can do this. You've done this before. This is what you do. You know how to do this. You must believe in yourself. Remember the rules. Remember the things that we live by. We believe in ourselves. We got to listen to ourselves. And when things got really crazy around me, people thought I went into seclusion. I didn't. I just went into quiet so I can listen to my inner voice and remind myself that anything is possible, that I'm possible, that I have everything I need, and I've been doing it for 32 years with Jaron. I can do it for 32 more without him. And that's what that voice is. And we hear it, and we often let it get drowned by other noises around us. You know, the emergency of the day, the other people in the house, people calling your name. But if you just pay close attention, and oftentimes I'm laughing at you, but I'm agreeing with you. Oftentimes it happens to me in the shower. You know, I hear that inner voice say, come on, Loren, you know what you need to do. This is what you got to do. Do A, B, C, and D. Take action right now. Stop procrastinating. Don't put it off. You know the answer. Go for it. You know what you need to do. And that's when you take action. And when you hear that voice, because you know better than anyone, when you hear that voice go off in your head and you know it's telling you what you already know, you know it's time to move. It's time to take action. And that has been the biggest part of the recovery of my journey, has been listening to that inner voice of myself.
Why are you not keynoting every conference in the world this year? You need to be the main stage keynote.
I don't know if you can help me do that. I've just been quiet.
I mean, I'm on fire as a natural person, but I am like fired up listening to you. Loren Ridinger, your book is Scrambled or Sunny Side Up, a great tribute to your best friend, your coach, your mentor, your life partner, your business co-partner, living your best life after losing your greatest love. You don't have to know who Loren is or who her husband is or was to appreciate the insights in this book. Loren, you are a lifelong entrepreneur, philanthropist, and co-founder of Market America and Shop.com. Highly recommend your energy starting everybody's day. I think you should just maybe have that app calm.com, Calm. You need an app that just says Loren, that in the morning, you just light me on fire. I'm so delighted you joined today.
Love you.
And I know that your book is going to do extraordinarily well. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, Scott.
And for a beautiful tribute to the entrepreneur and thought leader and coach that your husband was and remains to you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Scott. You've been so much fun today. I really appreciate you letting me take the time.
The pleasure is ours. And we'll see you back here next week for a new conversation on leadership.